Jetsunma, thank you so much for joining.
Thank
Very
you,
good
my
to
dear.
have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
And shall we go straight to the questions? So the first question is, how can one know that one is progressing in sadhana and spiritual life? Are there external or internal signs that indicate spiritual progress?
Well, I mean, the Bengali scholar Atisha in the 11th century said that the sure sign of progress, of spiritual progress, was the decrease of our negative emotions like anger, greed, jealousy, and so on, right? When our hearts naturally feel more kind, more content, more compassionate, then something inside is genuinely transforming towards the good, right? Whereas visions, psychic powers, feelings of bliss may be a sign, but also they might just be polishing up the ego, right? So genuine spiritual people just naturally radiate a kind of love and inner joy. You just know it. They're not trying to prove anything. They're not trying to impress anybody. And they usually have a very good sense of humor.
Very beautiful. And the next question is, can you give advice on how to improve the power of concentration and how to attain deeper states of concentration and meditation?
Oh, dear me. I mean, that takes up a whole session. But anyway, in brief, the Buddha said we all have a monkey mind, right? Always grasping at one thing, letting it go, grasping at something else, never still. So it is good for concentration to start with a simple object like the breath or a mantra or even a pebble, something very simple. Rest the attention on the object without straining, I've got to, focus on my breath, breathing in, breathing out. Not like that. Very relaxed, but just resting the mind on the object, right? And not getting tense. And then bringing the focus to the object in the beginning when we start, just for short periods, right? Really trying to concentrate, then relaxing, then bringing it back to concentrating again, just working with the mind so we don't strain the mind, but gradually the mind begins to settle, right? So in the meantime, we try to ignore the background chatter that's going on, all the thoughts going blah, 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 blah in the background. It's rather like if, we have a television on in the room, but we're concentrating on, say, reading a book, right? So our attention is on the book, and we have not turned down the TV, other people are watching, but we are not giving attention to that. We're ignoring that, and we are giving attention to what we're doing. So it's like that. But then when we get caught up again in our thoughts, as soon as we recognize it, we just bring the attention back again. Then it goes off, then we bring it back again. And so like this, the breath is a very good object to focus on because we cannot breathe in the past or in the future. We only can breathe now. So if our mind is really knowing the breath as it goes out and as it goes in, this is not pranayama, this is just ordinary breath. Normally we breathe, we're not even conscious of breathing. Now we are conscious, that's all. So in essence, it's very simple. But the problem is the mind gets very bored. After about 3 breaths, it's looking for some entertainment. And so this is where we have to be a little disciplined and tell our mind to, behave itself without, again, without flagellating ourselves, be a little bit, have that conviction that this is the most important thing at this moment we can do, is just to be with the breath, breathing in, breathing out. In the beginning, of course, as you know very well, it looks like we're thinking more than ever, and people complain that their minds are more out of control than they ever were. But this again is not because the mind is more busy, but simply because we're becoming more aware of just how busy our mind ordinarily is, which normally we don't notice because we're swimming along with the mind instead of now we're trying to bring our attention elsewhere. So every time we get lost, just bring ourselves back again. It's a practice of awareness, of learning how to become more clear, more conscious, again and again and again, right? So then gradually our awareness becomes more strong and the background noise begins to clear down. And so this will naturally, gradually lead to deeper and deeper levels of concentration. Yeah. And then as much as possible throughout the day, not just when we're sitting in formal meditation, but even throughout the day, to try to be more conscious of our thoughts. And if we get agitated, then bring the attention back to the breath again. Because the breath brings us back into the present. So, I mean, it's something which doesn't, you know very well, it doesn't happen overnight. Our minds are habitually totally out of control. And it takes time and dedication to slowly, slowly persuade the mind how to calm down and gradually become increasingly concentrated, and our attention span to be widened. I mean, I think, Rukmini, one of the problems nowadays is that people's attention spans are so short, and creating now more and more in documentaries and in media and everything, that people's attention spans are so microscopic now. And this is a big problem for young people, especially for the future. How to concentrate.
Thank you for this.
Keep it simple. I mean, I think people try to make things too complicated. You know, keep it very, very simple. Don't do too long at the beginning. Do a shorter periods more often than trying to, force the mind to be concentrated when it doesn't want to be concentrated. Keep it short and enjoy it. Because when we enjoy something, then it's much easier than when we force ourselves to do something with resistance. So this is why it also helps to do something which is pleasurable and makes the mind feel relaxed and at ease.
Thank you so much for this amazing summary of a big topic, which left me thinking that we should dedicate a session or maybe more just to this course in meditation. Thank you so much. But very, very helpful summary. Thank you. So the next question is, can you please share your advice on how to overcome fear?
Oh, my dear, that's another huge, huge subject. I mean, you really chose them. I don't know. Anyway, my best advice is not to fear fear. Because if we make fear into an object of our own inner fear, if we're fearing being fearful, then that creates, a double whammy. So rather than that, when fear arises within us, I don't mean if you're walking across the road and there's traffic on either side, you don't stop to think about it. That's natural fear. That's intelligent fear. But these inner fears and anxieties and paranoia which arise in people, what we need to do is to allow it to arise and to face that. This is fear. And then welcome it. Give it some love and ask it to speak and listen. What is this fear? Where is it coming from? What is it trying to tell me? You know, because normally when fear comes, we resist it, we push it down, or we try to distract ourselves with other things and keep it, you know, as if it's an enemy at bay. So here we are trying to make friends with it. Here we are trying to, you know, look, you know, quietly at the body. Where is the fear manifesting? You know, because sometimes the fear is in different parts of the body, in the heart or wherever. And then we have to recognize this is fear. And we have to accept that this is fear. But at the same time, we have to allow it to heal. And the only way to heal it is by giving it love and compassion and not making it into an enemy, right? Because, you know, these fears are often very deep-seated. It might not be anything really that's happening in the present moment. It might be something from way back when in our early unconscious childhood or even in past lives. We don't know where this fear comes from, but it's very deep inside. You know, there's... well, if I start telling you stories, I'll never get on. But, I mean, the idea is that we shouldn't try to suppress it, we shouldn't try to intellectualize it, but we should really look at it with a kind heart and listen to what the fear is trying to tell us, where are you coming from. And if we're very quiet and we just, you know, hold it gently, then, you know, very often after a while it begins to, you know, to speak where it's coming from, because normally we never want to hear it, you know. So we make friends with fear. That's the point. And of course, who is fearing ultimately is only the ego, right? Our full sense of self that we cling to and that we believe. But that doesn't mean that in the meantime, while we do believe in our ego, that we should disregard the messages which are coming from the ego. And one of them is this fear, this very primal fear which is within us and which we do need to deal with. But to deal with it with kindness and compassion, not with hatred or terror. Because a lot of people, when they meditate, they expect that they're going to get feelings of bliss and clarity, and discover that they, in fact, get feelings of fear or tremendous anger or tremendous lust or tremendous, very strong emotions coming up, which normally we clamp down and don't give any space to. I mean, sometimes I say it's like if we think of our mind as an ocean, then normally we're living on the surface of the ocean with all the waves going up and down and the undercurrents, and that's all we know. But as the mind quietens down and the waves subside, we go below the ocean surface, and then, you know, we expect we're going to meet with, you know, friendly dolphins and nice little goldfish, but there are sharks in there. There are killer whales. There are all sorts of monsters of the deep that people don't even know what's down there. And so this gives them the chance to surface and for us to meet with them. And I think it's very important how we meet with them. There was a video clip a while back of this woman who goes into the ocean and she meets with the sharks. And she puts her whole arm inside the shark's mouth to pull out the hooks which have got stuck in their throat because of the fishermen. And the sharks, so there were all these sharks around waiting for her to come and to help them next. I mean, the last thing we think of, the great fear, would be to put our arm in the mouth with all these teeth of these sharks. And yet, because of her great compassion for the sharks and their pain, which is what our fear is based on, she is able to help them, and they trust her completely. And from being something which, we have great terror of, they become, her greatest friends and allies. And to my mind, that is exactly how we should be treating all the monsters of the deep within our own psyche, with love and compassion and a desire to help.
This is so beautiful and powerful. So the next question is, can you share with us about your nunnery? How many nuns live there? What are their ages? How are their nuns accepted to the monastery? Are there different levels of vows that they take? What programs do they go through? What is the daily schedule? And do they live there permanently? Just a little bit what you can share. Just that your project is so amazing and inspiring that it's just inspiring to hear about the nunnery.
Okay, so well, at present we have about 114 nuns. They are all from the Himalayan regions, both the Indian Himalayas like Ladakh and Kinnoa Spiti, and through to Nepal and Bhutan. And they range in age from about 4 to 50. Mostly they're teenagers, 20s, 30s. The older ones, because they've been with us for 20 years. So when they came, they were probably in their 20s. Now they're well in their 40s. Well, let's all these questions. Let's see. A few of them are Tibetan, but they're Tibetans who came from Tibet originally, because now the borders are closed. Tibetans cannot come from Tibet anymore. So they usually come to the nunnery when they're teenagers. They've been to school, and then they decide they would like to be nuns. Their families, they all come from regions in which there are monasteries and nunneries. All these Himalayan regions are Buddhist. So even though maybe they're geographically India, culturally, spiritually, they're Tibetan. And previously they could go back over to Tibet. Now, of course, they can't go to Tibet, but they come down to the monasteries and nunneries in India. So they come as lay girls normally. They stay as lay girls for some months in the nunnery. They join the classes and start learning Tibetan, which is the first thing they need to learn. And then after some weeks or months, if they're suitable, usually they are suitable, but the nuns have to agree that they want them in the nunnery. They have to agree they want to be nuns. Then they receive their primary ordination from our Lama Kampa Rinpoche. So this is the basic 5 precepts, like not killing, not stealing, and in this case, celibacy and so forth. Just the basic 5 precepts. And then after some years of living here, they receive what is called the novice ordination, the shikshama ordination. In the Tibetan tradition, there's no higher ordination for nuns. It's something we've been trying to work at for many, many years, but there's a lot of resistance to having fully ordained nuns, even though the Buddha himself ordained. Recently in Bhutan, they did give the full ordination, but that's been ignored by the Tibetans. Anyway, then the nuns, first they study Tibetan, both oral and written Tibetan, and they also learn English. But the main emphasis, once they know enough Tibetan, is Buddhist philosophy and debate, and also rituals. They're very good in ritual. The pujas, right? They have long pujas, 4-hour pujas. There's a 12-year study program. And then several of our nuns who have already graduated are now themselves teachers. So the ones who wish to carry on with teaching are able to do that, to teach the younger nuns as they come up. Nuns also have an option to drop out after a few years if they really don't want to study anymore. But almost none of them do, very, very few. They mostly, they get to know each other, and they go up class by class and so they stay for the 12 years of study. We also have a retreat center with, at the moment, currently 12 nuns in long-term retreat. Several have already completed 13 years of retreat and are still going. In our monastery, which is down the road from us, the glory of the monastery are the yogi monks who in Tibet lived in caves, but they're called Togdens, and they're very special practitioners. They also have a lifelong vow of practice, and so they come to teach our nuns. So we are hoping that in time some of our retreat nuns will become Togdenma and start this yogic tradition for women, which my Lama Kamta Rinpoche had requested me to reintroduce back in India now. So they're doing very well. They're very, very dedicated. I go to see them every 2 weeks. Otherwise, they usually don't see people, but they are a very cheerful lot. So they're fine. The nuns get up at 5 o'clock, 5 a.m. Some get up at 4 in order to do their personal practice, but in general, 5 o'clock wake up time, and then they do a 1-hour Tara Puja. And then after that, we all sit for half an hour in silence, in silent meditation. And then after that, various ones do sweeping or various other work around the nunnery, and then they have breakfast. Various classes take up the morning and much of the afternoon, and then at 4 o'clock they do debating, which is this special method of debate which was introduced into Tibet from Nalanda University in India back in the 10th century, right? So they do debating for 2 hours, then at 6 o'clock they do puja for 1 hour, protection pujas and something called chut. Then after that, they have supper, and then they do their homework and memorizing, a lot of emphasis on memorizing the texts, and then lights out at 11 o'clock. In July and August, the nuns do a 2-month silent retreat. That's during the monsoon rains, and until the beginning of the new term in September. And since it is a nunnery and not just an academic institute, the nuns expect to stay here for life.
This is so impressive. Congratulations for this great achievement.
No, well, the nuns are good. I mean, they're really very they're very dedicated. Even their teachers and also their male teachers are very impressed by how focused they are, how serious they are, how devoted they are. But at the same time, they're so happy, and all the visitors always comment on how lovely it is to be in a place which is not only so peaceful, but in which all the nuns look so happy and they're smiling and laughing, and they have a lightness to them. So that, to my mind, is the most important thing, that the nuns are doing so well. That you can't predict, right? So we're very happy that they're so harmonious and happy.
And again, amazing job. Congratulations. So next question, moving to a different topic. How can one deal with difficult people in one's life and turn difficult relationships into opportunities for spiritual growth?
Yes, well, one of the really important qualities needed on the spiritual path is patience or forbearance or tolerance, that ability to deal with difficult people, difficult circumstances without getting all upset and angry or depressed. So learning to be patient, we cannot learn that from nice, friendly, loving people. Of course it's lovely to be surrounded by friendly, loving people, but it doesn't really teach us much. And we might think that we ourselves are ever so much nicer than we actually are because we're never challenged, right? So sometimes, not all the time maybe, but sometimes we need difficult people and relationships in order for us to develop these really important emotional responses, right? It's like going to a gymnasium and you work out on the hard machines, you know, really, you get challenging machines in order to get strong muscles. Because if the machine is too easy, we don't really learn much, you know, we're not going to get strong muscles from that. So we can think of a difficult person like our guru, right? They are our teacher of patience. So therefore we can say, oh, thank you for being so obnoxious. Now I can practice patience. So it's like that, right? Instead of resenting difficulties, we can welcome them as helping us to practice these very, very important qualities, which otherwise we wouldn't know about. And also because, you know, if we do if somebody is very difficult and we just feel very angry in return, then we can see, well, this is something I need to work on. You know, I didn't know I was an angry person. And now you've shown me, you're the mirror showing me my face. And this is, I'm very grateful for that. Now I'm going to work on that.
Thank you. Very nice. How to cultivate faith and remove doubts from one's mind?
Well, you know, really and truly, we should look at those doubts. We shouldn't try to suppress them. We should look at them and ask ourselves why we have them, right? Maybe they're valid doubts. You know, we shouldn't be too naive. There's no point in having faith in something which is false. And we know it's false inside ourselves, but we're stifling that because we're supposed to be devoted, right? But if we examine and we see that our doubts are unjustified and simply due to our wrong conception and our ignorance, then we can happily open our hearts to faith and trust. But first we should be careful, right? And if we have little spurts of doubt coming up, we shouldn't stifle it. We should look at it, right? Really, you know, I mean, it's also there's the point at which we doubt everything because our whole perception is screwed up. We really don't see things how they really are. We only see it through our egoistic ignorance. So we don't have to necessarily trust everything we think, but we should definitely examine it and analyze it. Doubt is not a bad thing. You know, the Buddha always said that we should question everything, including himself. He said, everybody, you should just question. Look at it. And when you have seen that what is saying is good and true, and you've seen it for yourself because you've analyzed it, then you can be open and trusting. But first you've got to look, examine.
Thank you very much. So there is a question on the practice of Tonglen. If you can please explain what it is and how to practice it.
Another huge thing. I did a 3-day course on Tonglen, and you want it in 2 minutes. Right, well, basically Tonglen, which is a Tibetan word, means sending and receiving, right? And the basic practice is to visualize or be in the presence of someone who is suffering, whether it's physical suffering or mental suffering in whatever way, right? Then when we have got that, you know, maybe a photo or we're sitting with someone who is sick or whatever, with the in-breath, as we breathe in, we visualize taking all their suffering plus the karmic causes of that suffering into ourselves and going down with the in-breath down into the heart chakra, right? It's like a vacuum cleaner going, you know, we're sucking up all that in the form of black light or dark, smoky, liquid, I mean something dark, and we're just sucking it up, and it's going in and down into our heart center. Then immediately in our heart center, as it touches the heart, it instantly transforms into very brilliant bright light, which then travels out through our outgoing breath and soaks into that person in front of us, into all their cells are filled with light and healing and so forth, right? So therefore the visualization rides on the breath. In breath darkness, out breath light, right? And so it's partly intended, I mean, to help the person, but also to knock at our ego, because our ego would rather bring in light and breathe out dark rather than the other way around. And so it's a way to, once the ego goes away, then the light of our true nature can flood forward, right? The light of our compassion and love. So that's how it allows our true nature to come, by, dispelling the ego and allowing for our natural love and compassion to go forth. So we breathe in, we breathe out, we breathe in, we breathe out, just quietly carrying on this practice. Or if we are very sick ourselves, or we have any real problems, we can also do it by visualizing all that sickness of all the other people in the world who also have the same problem. May that come in me, and may the light of my innate luminous nature go forward to heal all these beings in the world. So that also stops us from becoming too self-centered and self-pitying when we ourselves are suffering. But the main practice is for others, when you see them suffering, to take in their suffering and give out healing and light.
Thank you. Beautiful and very clear summary of the practice. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's something which many people, if they're very, especially lamas and other practitioners, when they're very, very sick and dying, and people ask them what practices they're doing, they usually say Guru Yoga and Tonglen.
Thank you. So the next question has to do with the theme of our symposium, which is unity in diversity. And the question is, how can we learn from other traditions without getting confused and still stick to one tradition and one teacher?
Well, of course, it is important to have a primary path and practice, not just a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and putting it all together like, a kind of, what's that thing where you're eating, you take a little bit of this, take a little, put it together, you probably get indigestion. So it's very important to have a primary path and a primary practice, but nonetheless, we can also learn a lot from other traditions. And sometimes they supply aspects which are not so well covered in our own tradition, right, in our personal path. So it's good to keep an open mind. And we have to remember that fundamentally all spiritual paths are telling us, first of all, to be ethical and to be kind. And then pointing, the spiritual paths, the great mystics of all the great religions, are telling us, they're pointing to that state of consciousness beyond thought and concepts that can be known but not expressed, not expressed in conceptual language, because it goes beyond conception. So by whatever name we put to the nameless, right? What difference does it make? It's just a name. You're putting a label on space, right? So to remember that different paths are leading up the same mountain, right? It's not different mountains. It's all different paths going up the north face, the south face. So it looks different, but if we ever get there, then it's a 360-degree view, right? And also that no religion has a copyright on ultimate reality. It belongs to us all. It's our true nature. We just have to discover it. Yeah, we don't own it. No religion owns it, right?
How is the situation of women in Tibetan Buddhism? How the situation of women in Tibetan Buddhism changed since you became active in this realm, and especially since your conversation with the Dalai Lama on this topic?
Well, you know, I mean, previously women in general were not educated, including nuns, right? And so the result of that was they had no voice. They were muted, right? You never heard anything from what the feminine point of view. It was all from the male point of view. The males wrote the books, the males were the teachers, and of course, not just in Tibetan Buddhism. I mean, this is a worldwide problem. But nowadays, women are becoming educated, and in the secular community, girls are going to university, they're training to become all sorts of skills as everywhere. And so therefore, nuns likewise, once it was recognized that women actually are quite intelligent and they can manage, the monks themselves went ahead and started to train the nuns and to teach them, and with great joy and enthusiasm. It has to be said, give them credit. They're all that the nuns now know as far as their learning and their training is concerned is on account of what the monks have given them. And now the nuns themselves have got the highest academic qualifications. They're becoming geshe-mas and kenmos, and they themselves are teaching, and they themselves have taken on the roles which traditionally were only open for the men. So we're really hoping that in the future the nuns gaining confidence will have a big contribution to make to society. And we are also training our nuns to start to give talks to all the other nuns and to make their talks interesting, in the hope that in the future they will spend some months every year back in their home villages in the Himalayas teaching Dharma to the lay people, which up to now has not really happened. And we think nuns will be actually much better at doing this than the monks, because you know, women are usually the ones who are most, even among the lay women, they're the ones with the great devotion, and you know, they're the ones with the problems, you know, problem husband, problem children, and they can't talk about it with a monk, but they could talk about it with a nun. So we are hoping that maybe some of the nuns also could be trained in counseling, and can really have a very significant role to play in the society from which they come from in the future. This is a whole new departure for nuns now. And even some lamas are recognizing that maybe in the future, the ones who can really reach out to revive the Dharma in their areas will be the nuns. So it's good. And the important thing is the nuns themselves now are gaining more and more confidence and respect, not only for themselves, but especially for each other too. And also the lay people are showing much more respect to the nuns now and appreciating their qualities. And the monks likewise have become very, very helpful. And I mean, just now, today, I heard our Khenpo, who's our professor, he said that for the death anniversary of our Lama Kamta Rinpoche, it was before the monks would come to the nunnery to debate with the nuns. And then in lockdown, they didn't do that. And he was asking now, could they come back, the monks, because they wanted to do traditional debating with the nuns. So it is very nice, you know, that they all appreciate each other like brothers and sisters, rather than the monks up here and the nuns down there. Now they're much more close and appreciative of each other's qualities. So it's good. We just need full ordination now. That's their last barrier, is to become fully ordained.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for this answer and also for your contribution to this area. And we pray for the full ordination to come.
Yeah, please pray. These are the prayers we can get. I don't know. There is a lot of resistance to the idea of nuns being educated. Once they got the idea, they liked it. But the idea of the nuns receiving ordination, even though they're still below the monks, according to the monastic rules, so it's not like they're going to take over. But there is a lot of interesting resistance from the authorities against nuns receiving full ordination. But it will happen eventually. It just takes time.
Wow. Thank you. So the next question is, what is bodhicitta and what is bodhicitta practice?
Well, bodhicitta literally means an enlightened or awakened mind or heart. And it's the aspiration to undertake spiritual practice, not just for the sake of oneself, but in order to eventually liberate all living beings. That doesn't just mean human beings, but also animals, fish, birds, insects, all living beings, and the spirit realm. Throughout time and space, for as long as samsara endures, right? For however long it takes. So, that aspiration that we are practicing not for the sake of ourselves, but for the sake of liberating all beings. In order to generate this aspiration of bodhicitta, we first start by taking the bodhisattva vow. And just recently, our Lama Kapta Rinpoche was here at the nunnery to give the bodhisattva vow to the nuns. And then all the monastery and all the lay people, they also came over, because that was for them also a unique opportunity to again regenerate this bodhisattva vow altogether. So we try to cultivate loving kindness and compassion towards all beings again. And we remind ourselves how to do that. Well, one way is to remind ourselves that basically I really would rather be happy and not be miserable. I would rather not suffer. I would rather feel okay. And all beings would rather feel okay and not be miserable. That's not just me. I mean, every human being we see would rather be happy than sad. Every animal, every bird, every living being would really rather feel happy than to feel sad. So why am I so important, right? This is the question. So, here we are in samsara going up and down, and we create a lot of negative karma, and so we suffer. How sad, right? So the only solution to this is to be liberated from samsara. So here we all are in the prison house of samsara, and I've got to get the key. Now I've got the key, I can't just walk out. I have to open up the doors wide and help everybody else to get out first. Come on, quickly, get out. The door's open now, right? So that's the aspiration. But we can't get people out of prison if we still are imprisoned, right? We have to open the door first. Or like if you think of someone, drowning in a big swamp, then if we make lots of efforts and then we get on dry land, I mean, how could we turn around and see all our parents and our children, our loved ones, all our friends and everybody, and say, well, look, folks, so sorry that you're drowning in the swamp, but I got out by my efforts, so you also can get out by your efforts, so good luck. and turn your back and walk away. I mean, we couldn't, right? We'd have to say, well, now I'm on dry land. I'll try and help pull you all out. Give me your hand. I'll keep pulling, right? So that's the idea. That how can we possibly imagine that we can be liberated just for ourselves? How, when we're so interconnected, intimately interconnected, our consciousness very deeply interconnected with all beings, if one gets liberated, we all have to be liberated, however long it takes. So that's the idea, that as far from leaving samsara, we will vow to come back again and again into samsara, even though hopefully with a bit more wisdom along with the compassion, so that we don't get dragged down again, and be there to work for the benefit of all beings until they are all finally liberated. So that aspiration to practice on behalf of all beings is bodhicitta.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Next question is about shamatha meditation. What exactly is it and how to practice it?
Okay, well, basically shamatha meditation means a practice which makes the mind calm and clear, right? So any practice which makes the mind calm and clear would be a form of shamatha. In other words, there's no specific practice other than developing our attention and calming the thought flow, right? So anything which does that would be classified as shamatha. So usually, as I said before, in Buddhism, we start by observing the breath, the ingoing and outgoing of the breath, just knowing it without altering it, just knowing it until the mind begins to quieten down, ignoring the background thoughts, and being mindful of the breath. So that is a basic shamatha practice. As the awareness grows stronger, the mind, the mental stream gets quieter. It just naturally quietens down. We don't try to quieten it down. Just naturally, as our mindfulness, our awareness gets more powerful, so the thought flow begins to slow down, right? And so then, when that happens, when our mindfulness is clear and our thoughts are a little less turbulent, we can turn the awareness back onto the thoughts themselves. Like, you know, someone sitting on the banks watching the river going by. We're no longer in the river being swept away by the river. We're now on the bank witnessing the river flowing by, right? So otherwise we can use a mantra, we can use really anything. It doesn't really matter. We're just trying to hone our attention. So shamatha is about calming the mind and acquiring the ability to be aware. But of itself, it does not liberate. Why? Even if we go into very deep levels of mental absorption, it does not liberate. Why? Because it is still dualistic. There's a subject and an object, right? And we are still, we might be very blissed out and calm, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there is really very deep insight into the nature of the mind. So then the next stage is what is called vipassana, and that is an insight into the very nature of our consciousness, right? So shamatha is like making the mind into a very sharp scalpel, very clean, very sharp, very flexible, very workable mind. Beautiful mind. We want it there, it goes there. We want it there, it goes there. It's not fighting us anymore, right? The mind is completely clear and workable. And so it's like a very fine scalpel, but then we have to work the scalpel. With a surgeon, now we have to dissect the mind itself, right? What is a thought? Where do they come from? And so forth. But to be able to do that, to really be able to make use of the mind, to understand the mind, first we have to have a very workable mind. And that is the role of shamatha practice. to make the mind completely workable for us so we can use it like a fine tool.
Just a follow-up on that. So you mentioned it doesn't liberate because there is still duality, subject-object. And then the next step is vipassana. What exactly is the process to attain liberation? If it starts with the basic, the shamatha, what come next?
Let's see. Did we ask that one at any point? Anyway, what we do, it doesn't matter, I can say. You know, now we're looking at the mind, right? The mind, the thoughts are going by, slower, much slower now. And then we are looking, even in shamatha, we can do this. The mind, the thoughts begin to get slower and slower and slower. And then if our attention is very clear and relaxed, it can happen that between the past thought and the future thought, there's a gap. It's like clouds, right? You know, you're watching the clouds and then suddenly the clouds part and we see the sky. So in that way, we see what is called the nature of the mind. It's like that pure consciousness, that pure awareness behind the coming and going of the thoughts. Usually it only lasts for a very short time. And so, but then we recognize that that is a whole different level of consciousness to anything we've known before. It's like suddenly waking up. Wow, that's not me. I mean, the ego is not there, right? There's this open connectivity instead of the separation which the ego brings about, the dualistic me and other. Suddenly, all that falls apart. Usually it only lasts for a very short time at first. And then the practice is to stabilize that realization, to make it so that we can bring it back whenever we want. And finally, I mean, really enlightened being live in that state of mind the whole time. But normally what happens is that we go on to vipassana, which is to look at the thought and say, what is a thought? We swim in an ocean of thoughts. But like a fish in the water, we don't know what is water. We don't know what is consciousness. We don't know what is a thought. Where does a thought come from? Where does it go to? What's it look like? Who is thinking? And then if we say, well, I am thinking, you know, the great question, well, who am I? And then again, because the mind is very clear, because it's been doing all this shamatha, so it's very sharp. And so then we can dissect level after level after level of this I consciousness until, like peeling the skin of an onion, we find it doesn't have any, you know, our idea of the ego is that it's something solid, real, enduring, and unchanging. It's me. And that is our ultimate delusion. And all the great spiritual traditions have realized that what prevents us from seeing our true nature is it's covered over by our little self. And that is what needs to dissolve. And so it's no good beating it up. That just ends up with a sad little, you know, me. We have to see through it. We have to dissolve it through insight, through wisdom. And that's the strength of good shamatha, that it makes the mind very clear, unwavering, focused, totally able to go through. And with the vipassana insight, it then can dissolve completely the sense of this little me, which is covering up our true nature, which the true nature itself has no name. That's why everybody gives it many, many names, right? But it is, it's awakening up, you know. In Buddhism, it's also called Bodhi. Bodhi means to wake up, because we're all dreaming, right? And we need to wake up to who we really are, which is not who we think we are, which is our tragedy. So shamatha is a good basis on which to then build up the strength of the mind to be able to cut through to the ultimate reality, which we all are.
Thank you very much. So I'm looking at the time. I know we have to keep it to an hour, but there's so many more questions. So I think maybe if it's okay, we will just take two more.
Okay, what are they?
So what is the understanding of karma and the law of karma in Tibetan Buddhism? How can we purify negative karma, and can we transcend karma?
Okay. Well, the Buddha said that karma, which really means actions, right? Karma is intention. In other words, it's not just what we do, but why we do it, right? So whether or not the underlying motivation was positive or negative will influence the result, right? It's not just what we do, but why. So anyway, the idea is that the main circumstances which are occurring to us now are the result mostly of past actions of body, speech, and mind in this lifetime or in past lifetimes. So the important point now is how we respond to what is happening to us in the present, right? Because how we respond now is creating karma for the future. So moment to moment, we're eating up the past and we're creating the future. It's very dynamic. But it's why we have to be careful and mindful to make skillful responses, even to difficult circumstances, right? Then if we make skillful responses and we strengthen the skillfulness, like the patience and forbearance, for example, in difficult circumstances, then what would have been otherwise regarded as a result of bad karma might actually be considered to be a good thing, because it's helping us on the spiritual path. So it's only our ego that's deciding this is bad or this is good, right? I mean, maybe something which looks good actually is spiritually a dead end, and something which is very challenging might be spiritually very productive. So, we shouldn't always think of it from the point of view of comfort, whether this feels nice or doesn't feel nice. What are we learning from this? That is the question. So therefore, if our responses even to difficult situations like loss and sickness and so forth is positive and skillful, then we're planting good seeds for the future. But if we get angry and upset the whole time, then we're creating poison seeds. So all these karmic seeds, according to Mahayana Buddhism, are stored in what is called the alaya vijnana, or the store consciousness, or the substratum consciousness. And that it arises when causes and conditions are favorable. Now, since from this perspective we've had countless past lives in which we've done everything, good, bad, and indifferent, we really don't know what's going to come up. And so for that reason, bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people, right? We don't know. We can't tell. So since we've done everything, there's such a collection of seeds in there beyond thought. We don't know what's going to come up. But the important thing is that we take everything and use it on the path, right? In the meantime, in Tibetan Buddhism, there are certain practices for purifying past karma, such as a Vajrasattva practice and a fasting and prostration practice called Nyungne and so forth. And this can help. But the best way to purify past karma is to recognize that everything which happens to us can be used on the path. Because then we have no hope and fear, right? We are able to utilize everything. And then we're not discriminating, this is good, this is bad, oh, this must be the result of bad karma or whatever. It's what's happening, how to deal with it skillfully and take it on the path. That's the best purification. Well, the best purification is to have no ego. If you want to overcome karma, then you have to overcome the ego, right? Because it's the belief that there is someone who made the karma, that there is an actor, an actual actor, which holds it all together, right? Can you get my Marlowe? It's on my shelf. Oh, that's a good one. Yep. Yes, that's perfect. Okay, right. So these are all our karmic actions, right? Going like this. You pull one and all the other ones go with it, right? But what's holding it together is the string, right? So the string is linking together all these karmic acts, and the one goes after the other after the other. So in order to prevent that, you have to cut the string. If you cut the string, then you pull one bead, but the other beads won't come, right? So that string that holds it all together, the thread, is the belief in the actor, the ego. When the ego totally dissolves into pure consciousness, then there is no karma.
Wow.
Wow.
Very beautiful.
Would it be?
Thank you so much. And so the last question for today, for this session, is the world has gone through a challenging time the last few years, and slowly things are starting to get back to how they used to be. And at the ashram, we're getting more people now for this celebration of the new year. So could you offer us a message, some words of inspiration or spiritual advice for the new year?
Well, I would say really think positive. You know, the world is full of darkness and aggression, fear, paranoia, and the media stokes this up tremendously. It puts out a lot of darkness into the universe, and people plug into that dark energy. And so I think it's very important for people who are trying to walk on a spiritual path to look to the light and to send out light into the world, send out goodness, kindness, compassion, hope, all the positive qualities, and not plug into that negative energy. In their home, in their hearts, in their society, and in their spiritual places, bring in the light, bring in the love, and bring in the compassion and the belief in the goodness, the innate goodness of all living beings. And just keep with the light, because light will overcome darkness even of 1,000 years. You know, you hold up a candle and it illuminates so much, even just one candle. So, you know, hold to that. Hold to the love, hold to the light. And wonderful what you're doing in your ashram. Really, that is a perfect example of light and love and kindness and joy. Joy is also very important. So well done, all of you, really. From my heart, I really commend you for what you're doing. And the difficulties you've also gone through in these last few years, you know, but you kept going. And well done. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you so much for this beautiful message and for this very inspiring interview, as always. We highly appreciate you, Jetsunma, and all your work. And we're we feel very honored for our connection with you for so many years. So we really would like to wish all the best to you, to your good health and long life and continuation of your mission, and with joy and inspiration. And to all your nuns, all the people in your nunnery, and we look forward to staying in touch and hopefully to welcome you back on Paradise Island to our ashram sometime soon. So we'll conclude now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rukmini, and good luck to all of your wonderful Dharma fellows there in your ashram. Wonderful. And all the people who are fortunate enough to come into contact with such good energy. They're very, very lucky. So happy Christmas gone and future, and really may the new year bring lots and lots of beautiful inspiration to so many people. Let it be a bit good year next year, you know. It's about time.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen.